The wine glass hit the floor at 8:47 on a Friday night, and nobody at table 7 even looked up. That was the first thing Elena noticed about them. Not the coats, though the coats alone probably cost more than 3 months of her rent combined. Not the way the host had walked them to the best table in the house without being asked, without checking a reservation, without doing anything except reading the air around the man in the center and making a fast decision. Not even the ring on the woman's finger, which caught the chandelier light from across the room and threw it back in every direction like it was showing off. No. What Elena noticed first was that not one of them looked at the broken glass. A busboy named Kevin was on his knees in under 4 seconds, cloth already out, apology already forming in his mouth, and the 4 people at table 7 kept talking, kept laughing at whatever they had been laughing at before the crash, kept existing in the easy, unshakable way of people who had grown so used to other people cleaning up around them that the cleaning had simply become part of the background noise of their lives. Elena watched Kevin disappear back into the kitchen. She picked up her notepad and walked over. The restaurant was called Elara. It sat on the 14th floor of a building in the financial district, and on a clear night, you could see the river from the east-facing tables. The menu changed every season. The wine list was 32 pages. The cheapest item on it was $40, and that was for water. Sparkling, obviously. Still was complimentary. It was not the kind of place Elena had imagined herself working when she was 24 and finishing at the top of her law school class. It was also not the kind of place she had imagined herself working when she was 31 and sitting across from her supervisor, sliding her badge and her credentials across his desk in an envelope she had sealed the night before, so she would not change her mind. But here she was, 33 now, apron tied, notepad out. "Good evening," she said. "My name is Elena. I'll be taking care of you tonight." The man at the head of the table looked at her for exactly 1 second. It was a different kind of look than she usually got in this room. Most guests looked at her the way they looked at the furniture. Registered her, filed her, moved on. This man looked at her like he was reading something written in very small print, and he was making sure he got every word right. Then the moment passed. He turned back to the conversation at the table. The woman beside him, the one with the ring, leaned forward and began listing modifications to an order she had not yet placed, based on a menu she had apparently memorized in advance. No cream in the risotto. The salmon had to be a specific temperature. The salad dressing on the side, but not the house dressing. The other one, the lemon one, and only a small amount because last time it was too much. Elena wrote it all down. She had a very good memory. Always had. It was the thing her mother had noticed first when Elena was small. The way she could hear something once and hold it, word for word, like her mind was a room where nothing was allowed to move after it was placed. It had made her a good student, a good attorney, a good prosecutor. It made her an excellent waitress, which was not a sentence she had ever expected to form about herself, but there it was. She took the rest of the orders, confirmed them back without looking at her notepad, and walked to the kitchen. The head chef, a compact man named Gordon, who communicated mostly in grunts and occasionally in full sentences when something impressed him, looked at her ticket and raised both eyebrows. "Table 7?" he said. "Table 7, she confirmed. He looked at the modifications. He grunted twice. Then he nodded and turned to his station, which was his way of saying he understood, and also his way of saying this was going to take a minute, and also his way of saying she should probably get the wine sorted before anything else. She got the wine sorted. The sommelier, a young man named Patrick who was newer than Elena and still nervous around the more demanding tables, pulled the bottle she requested and checked the temperature twice before handing it over. "Is it the right one?" he asked. "It's exactly what they asked for," she said. She carried it out. She poured. The woman with the ring, Vivienne, swirled it, sipped it, and set the glass down without comment, which in Ilara's particular language meant it was acceptable. Elena returned to the kitchen. For the next 40 minutes, the service was smooth. The salmon came out at the right temperature. The risotto had no cream. The salad dressing was on the side, and there was not too much of it. Elena moved between the kitchen and the table with the kind of quiet efficiency that her old colleagues would have recognized immediately, and that most of the guests at Alara never noticed at all. She preferred it that way. There was a version of herself that she sometimes thought about, the version that had stayed, that had not sealed the envelope, that was still in the federal building 3 miles east of here, still carrying the case files that had followed her into her sleep for 2 years, still sitting across from people who wanted to break her before she could break them in court. That version of Elena had been sharp and certain, and completely sure of what she was doing and why. That version had also not slept properly in 18 months, had not eaten a full meal without her phone going off in 22 months, had sat in her car in the parking structure of the federal building one Thursday afternoon and stared at the concrete wall in front of her for 45 minutes without being able to remember how she had gotten there. So she had sealed the envelope. She had handed it over. And she had spent the last year and a half slowly, quietly, deliberately, learning how to be a person again in a world that was not on fire. Alara had been part of that, the rhythm of it, the way a good service had a shape, a flow, a beginning and an end, the way she could walk in at 5, work until close, and walk out having done something concrete and finished and containable. No open files, no pending testimony, no case that would take 2 more years to reach trial. Just tables, orders, service. It was not forever. She knew that. But it was what the moment required, and Elena had always been good at giving a moment exactly what it required. She was coming out of the kitchen with the bread basket when it happened. She had done this walk approximately 400 times since she started at Alara, bread basket in both hands, slight turn to navigate past the server station near the east wall, 3 steps to table 7. She had done it 400 times without incident. On the 401st time, the edge of her sleeve caught the handle of the basket. It was not a dramatic event. Nothing fell. Nothing spilled. The basket tilted, corrected, tilted again, and Elena caught it with both hands before it could do anything more interesting than make a soft sound against the rim of the bread plate. She steadied it, placed it on the table, straightened up. The whole thing lasted approximately 2 seconds. Vivian laughed. It was the kind of laugh designed to be heard, shaped for an audience. It started at their table and sent itself outward, toward the couple near the window, toward the 2 men at the bar, toward the host stand where the manager was reviewing tomorrow's bookings and looked up without meaning to. "Oh goodness," Vivian said. She was looking at Elena the way someone looks at something they are not entirely sure how to categorize. "Careful there." Elena said nothing. "It's fine," said the man across from Vivian. His name was Owen, and he had spent most of dinner looking at his phone. "It's just funny," Vivian said. She touched the man beside her, the one at the head of the table, lightly on the arm. "They really do try their best, don't they?" Elena stood still. She had learned, in 2 years of federal prosecution, that the most powerful thing a person could do in a room was nothing. Not the aggressive nothing of a person holding back. The quiet nothing of a person who did not need the moment to go any particular way. Vivian seemed to find the stillness unsatisfying. "Sweetie," she said. The word landed the way it was meant to, like a small, deliberate weight. "This might not be the right line of work for everyone. Some people are just better suited to—" She paused, and her eyes did something brief and precise, moving from Elena's face to the apron to the bread basket and back, covering the whole distance in under a second. Other things. The table went quiet. Not because the table was uncomfortable. Because Vivian was waiting. Elena looked at her. 1 second. 2. "I'll make sure your butter is out before the main course," Elena said. She walked back to the kitchen. The manager, a careful man named Philip who had been running front of house at Alara for 11 years and had seen most things, caught her eye as she passed the host stand. She gave him a small nod. He gave one back. In the kitchen, Gordon looked at her face and said nothing, which was his version of asking. "I'm fine," she said. She tied her apron tighter and picked up the next ticket. Behind her, through the door that separated the kitchen from the dining room, she could hear the sound of the table resuming its conversation. Light voices, someone making a joke, the soft, particular clink of expensive glasses. She did not think about the woman's face. She thought about her mother's next appointment, about whether the night bus still ran from this part of the financial district after 11, about whether she had enough left in her checking account to cover the electricity bill before the automatic payment came out on Monday. These were the thoughts she had learned to keep in front of her, in the foreground, lit, and specific and practical. They worked better than the alternative. She picked up the butter. She carried it out. She placed it on the table without making eye contact with anyone, confirmed the mains were 10 minutes out, and returned to the floor. At table 7, the man at the head of the table watched her walk away. He had not said a single word during the exchange, had not looked at Vivian while it was happening, had not looked at Elena either, had simply held his wine glass and appeared to be thinking about something else entirely. But his eyes had followed her, and the man at the head of table 7, who had walked into Ilara under a name that was not his own, had not survived 20 years in the particular world he occupied by being wrong about the things he observed. He set his wine glass down. He picked up his phone. He sent a message to one person. 3 words. Then he put the phone back in his pocket and smiled at something Vivian said and ate the rest of his dinner in the easy, unhurried manner of someone who already knew how the rest of the evening was going to go. Elena did not know what the message said. She was bringing out the mains. She was thinking about the electricity bill. She did not know yet that table 7 had just changed everything. She would know soon. The mains arrived on time. The salmon was still the right temperature. The risotto had no cream. Vivian ate without commenting, which in the specific dialect of difficult guests meant that the food was good, and she was not going to say so. Elena moved through the rest of her section. Table 3 needed a refill. Table 9 was celebrating a birthday and wanted to know if the kitchen could do something with the dessert. Table 11 had a question about the menu that took a moment to answer because the question was actually 3 questions folded inside each other. She handled all of it. She handled it the way she handled everything. Quietly, completely, without needing anyone to see her do it. When she swung back past table 7 to check on the mains, the man at the head of the table looked at her again. Same as before. That small, deliberate look. The one that read rather than simply saw. "Everything is perfect," he said. It was the first thing he had said directly to her all evening. His voice was low and even, and gave nothing away. "I'm glad to hear it," Elena said. She moved on. At the service station near the east wall, Patrick was restocking the wine glasses, and not doing a very good job of pretending he had not been watching table 7. "Who is he?" he asked under his breath when she got close enough. "A guest," Elena said. "He looks important." "Everyone in this room thinks they're important," she said. "That's why they can afford to eat here." Patrick almost smiled. Fair point. She picked up a water pitcher and went back to the floor. Table 7 ordered dessert. Vivian wanted the chocolate one, but with the sauce on the side. Owen wanted coffee. The man at the head of the table, who had said his name was Daniel when the reservation was made, ordered nothing and checked his phone again, while the others decided. Elena brought the dessert, brought the coffee, brought the check when they asked for it. She was at the server station printing the receipt when Philip appeared at her shoulder. "Table 7 wants to compliment the service," he said. She looked at him. "The gentleman asked for the manager specifically," Philip continued. He had a particular expression on his face that she had not seen before. Careful, measured, like he was reading the words off a page and was not entirely sure what language he was reading them in. "He said the service was exceptional. He asked about you." "Asked what?" "Your name." Philip paused. "Your full name." Elena was quiet for a moment. "What did you tell him?" "I told him your name was Elena." Another pause. He already seemed to know the rest. She looked at the receipt in her hand. "Thank you, Philip," she said. She walked the check out to table 7. The man, who was not Daniel, who had never been Daniel, took it from her without looking at the amount. He signed it. He placed it back in the folder, and on top of the folder, he set a card. Cream-colored, heavy. The kind of card that did not come from an office supply store. "Have a good evening," he said. She picked up the folder. She did not look at the card until she was back at the server station. When she did, she read it once. Then she read it again. Then she put it in her apron pocket and finished her shift. Vivian Cole was already standing at the valet when Elena came through the staff exit at 11:14. The night was cold enough to see breath. The street was quiet the way financial district streets get quiet after 10 on a Friday, when the last of the after-work crowd has gone, and the buildings go dark floor by floor from the top down. Vivian was on her phone. The ring caught the light from the parking lot lamp overhead. She did not look up when Elena came through the door. Elena had her coat half on, keys already out, bag over one shoulder. She was 3 steps from her car when Vivian looked up from her phone and their eyes met. Vivian's gaze did the thing it always did. It started at Elena's face and moved downward, taking inventory, registering the coat that was not expensive, and the bag that had seen better days, and the shoes that were comfortable rather than beautiful. And by the time it came back up to Elena's face, it had already made up its mind about everything. "Long night?" Vivian said. It was not unkind this time, just absent. The way you comment on traffic or the weather when you are standing near someone and feel the need to fill the air with something. Elena thought about the card in her apron pocket. She thought about the name on it, the initials below the single handwritten line, and what those initials meant to the part of her that had spent 2 years learning exactly who the important people were in the world she had once moved through every day. She thought about the phone call she was going to make tonight, not to the number on the card, to a different number, one she still had memorized. "Have a good night," Elena said. She got in her car. She sat for a moment in the quiet of it, the engine not yet running, the card still in her pocket. Then she started the car. She drove home. And the woman who had spent a year and a half learning how to be invisible, learning how to be small, learning how to let the world move around her without pulling her back into the current, felt the current anyway. It had found her. It always did. The card sat on her kitchen table all night. She made coffee. She sat across from it. She did not touch it again. The card said, "I believe we have something worth discussing, Ms. Vasquez." And below that, the initials. DM. She knew what DM stood for. The whole federal building knew what DM stood for. She drank her coffee and stared at the card, and thought about what it meant that the man sitting at table 7 tonight had known her full name before Philip told him, had known enough to have a card ready with those specific words on it, had watched her the way he watched her across a dinner that his fiancée had spent making Elena feel like furniture. She thought about Vivian's face in the parking lot, the ring on her finger, the easy, careless way she took up space in a world that had always arranged itself around her. She thought about a name she had not spoken out loud in 18 months, a case file she had sealed, a trial date she had not attended because she had already walked away by then, and the colleague who took over had called her afterward to tell her the verdict, and she had sat on her bathroom floor and felt something she still could not name accurately. Not relief, not grief, something in between that did not have a proper word. At 2 in the morning she picked up her phone. She did not call the number on the card. She called a number she knew by heart. It rang 4 times. Elena, her old supervisor's voice, rough with sleep but not surprised. He had never quite stopped expecting her to call. "What time is it?" "Late," she said. "I need to tell you something." "Okay. I think I'm ready to come back." A long silence. "What changed?" he asked. She looked at the card on the table. "Someone reminded me," she said, "that I'm not actually invisible." She heard him exhale. "Come in Monday," he said. She said she would. She hung up. She sat with the coffee going cold in her hands, and the card on the table, and the kitchen quiet around her, and for the first time in 18 months, she did not feel like someone who had walked away from something. She felt like someone who had been waiting. And the waiting, it turned out, was over. The federal building on Monday morning smelled exactly the same as she remembered. Floor cleaner, printer toner, the particular dry cold of air conditioning running too strong in rooms where the windows did not open. She had spent 5 years breathing that smell without noticing it, and then 18 months not breathing it, and now it hit her in the lobby like a hand on the shoulder. Her old supervisor's name was Craig. He was a tall man in his 50s, with the kind of face that looked permanently like it was reviewing evidence, which was appropriate because it usually was. He met her at the elevator and walked her to his office without stopping to explain anything to the people they passed, which was his style. He had always believed that the best way to reintroduce something was to simply put it back where it belonged and let the room adjust. He closed the office door. "You look different," he said. "I got some sleep," she said. "More than that." He studied her for a moment. "You look like someone who made a decision." "I made several." He sat down. She sat across from him. Between them, on the desk, was a file folder. Thin. The kind of thin that meant the case had not been touched in a while. "Before you come back officially," Craig said, "I need to tell you something." "Okay." "The Moretti case." He put one hand on the folder, did not open it. It never fully closed. She kept her face still. "The 2021 prosecution got us the lower tier," he continued. "The middle structure. A few of the financial channels, but the top never got touched. You know that." "I know that. We've had it on the shelf. Not enough to move. Not enough to build." He paused. "Until 3 weeks ago." She looked at the folder. "What changed 3 weeks ago?" "A source," Craig said. "Someone on the inside. Someone who has been watching the structure for a long time, and recently decided that watching was not enough." He opened the folder then, turned it so she could read the front page. "Someone who, as of last Friday, appears to have made direct contact with you." Elena looked at the initials at the top of the page. She did not let her face do anything. "You knew he was there," she said. "Friday night." "We had him under observation," Craig said. "Routine. He moves, we track. When our observer reported that he made contact with you at the restaurant, I figured you'd call. You could have warned me." "Would you have gone in if I had?" She thought about it honestly. "Probably not," she said. Craig nodded. "So." He leaned back. "Do you want to hear what he told us? Or do you want to pretend Friday night was a coincidence and go back to Ilara?" She looked at the folder. She thought about the card on her kitchen table. About Vivian's eyes in the parking lot. About Kevin on his knees picking up glass while 4 people looked the other way. About a woman who moved through the world certain that it would always rearrange itself for her. About the ring on her finger, and the man who had put it there, and what that man actually was beneath the table and the dinner, and the easy way he occupied a room. She pulled the folder toward her. "Tell me everything," she said. Craig talked for 2 hours. She did not interrupt once. By the time he finished, the folder was open in front of her, and she had read every page, and the coffee he had sent someone to get was completely cold, and she had not touched it. "The source is reliable?" she asked. "Reliable enough that 3 independent checks came back clean," Craig said. "We're not moving on trust alone. We have documentation. We have financial records. We have testimony from 2 people who were inside the structure long enough to know where everything is." "And the source's motivation?" Craig was quiet for a moment. "That," he said carefully, "is something I think you already have a theory about." She did. She was not going to say it out loud yet. Not until she was certain. "What do you need from me?" she asked. "You built the original framework," he said. "You know the architecture of this better than anyone alive. The new evidence fits into your original structure like it was made for it. Because it was." He paused. "We need you to take lead." "As of when?" "As of now, if you want it." She closed the folder. She looked at her hands on the desk. 2 years ago, those hands had been shaking when she sealed the envelope. Not visibly, but inside, somewhere behind the knuckles and the steady professional exterior, something had been shaking that she had not been able to stop. She had stopped it by leaving. By putting on an apron and carrying bread baskets and learning how to be in a room without needing the room to know who she was. And now she was back at the desk, and the folder was in front of her, and the case that had kept her awake for 2 years was sitting there, waiting to be finished, and her hands were not shaking. "I'll need my old access restored," she said. "Done by this afternoon. I'll need the full source file. Everything. Not just what you gave me. You'll have it by end of day. And I'll need to move carefully. If he knows I'm back, The timeline changes. Understood. She stood up. She picked up the folder. I'll need a new badge, she said. Craig almost smiled. Already printed, he said. She took it from his desk. She held it in her hand for a moment, feeling the weight of it, the familiar, specific weight of a thing she had thought she was done carrying. She clipped it to her jacket, and Elena Vasquez, who had spent a year and a half becoming invisible on purpose, walked out of Craig's office and back into the building that had been waiting for her. The weeks that followed had a different texture than anything she had experienced before. Not the sharp electric tension of the original prosecution, where every day felt like walking across glass, and the only question was whether it would hold. This was quieter, more deliberate, the kind of work that required patience above everything else, and patience was something she had spent the last 18 months practicing in ways she had not understood at the time. She worked early mornings and late nights. She read everything. She rebuilt the architecture of the case from its original foundation outward, fitting the new evidence into the structure the way a builder fits new walls into an existing frame. It was careful work. It was slow work. It was exactly the kind of work that could not be rushed without breaking. She did not contact the man whose card was still on her kitchen table. She did not need to. The information she needed was coming through proper channels now. Verified, documented, traceable. Whatever hand had moved things in her direction on a Friday night in a restaurant on the 14th floor, the result was already in motion, and it did not require her to reach back toward it. She thought about that sometimes, late at night, when the file was open on her desk, and the building was quiet, and the work felt very large and very old. She thought about a woman, in an expensive coat, who had looked at her across a dining room and seen nothing worth looking at, who had used the word sweetie like a small, precise instrument, who had gone home that night and probably not thought about it once. Elena did not think about Vivian Cole with anger. Anger was a thing she had learned, over 2 years of prosecution and 18 months of quiet, to be very careful with. Anger burned fast and left you in the dark. What she felt instead was something cooler, more durable, a clear-eyed understanding of how the world actually worked, underneath the chandeliers and the expensive coats and the rings that caught the light. And the knowledge, not the hope, the knowledge, that the world, eventually, corrects itself. Not always, not fast enough, not for everyone, but sometimes. And she was going to make sure this was one of those times. 6 weeks after the night at Alara, Vivian Cole's engagement announcement ran in the society pages. Elena read it on her phone during a break between case reviews. A small photograph, the ring visible, a caption about the couple's plans and their guest list, and the venue they had chosen. She set her phone face down. She picked up the next file. She kept working. 8 weeks after the engagement announcement, on a Tuesday morning in early spring when the sky over the city was the particular pale gray that comes just before the weather decides what it wants to do, a series of search warrants were executed simultaneously across 4 properties. It was the kind of operation that required months of preparation and about 40 minutes to complete. Elena was not in the field. She was in the office, at the desk she had come back to, with Craig standing behind her left shoulder, and 2 other attorneys on either side of her, and a phone line open to the lead agent running the operation on the ground. She listened. She did not pace, did not lean forward, sat very still with her hands flat on the desk, and her eyes on the middle distance, while the reports came in, one by one, floor by floor, property by property. The 4th property took a little longer. There was a locked room that required a second warrant, which they had prepared for, and the additional time it took was 9 minutes, which was within the range they had anticipated. When the all-clear came through on the last property, Craig exhaled beside her. She did not. "What's the count?" she asked the phone. The lead agent gave it. She wrote it down. She thanked him. She hung up. "Elena," Craig said. "It's not done yet," she said. "We have weeks of processing. The testimony has to hold. The documentation has to be verified." She picked up her pen. This was one morning. "There is still a lot of work." He looked at her for a moment. "You're allowed to feel something," he said. She looked at the number she had written down. "I feel like getting back to work," she said. And she did. Vivian Cole read about the warrants over breakfast on the third morning after they were executed. When the story finally reached the newspaper, she read with her coffee in the apartment she shared with the man she was going to marry. She did not fully understand what she was reading. The names in the article meant things to other people, to people who had spent years in rooms she had never entered, reading files she had never seen, building pictures of a world she had only ever lived on the surface of. To her, the names were simply names. She called her Uncle Carmine to ask if he had seen the news. She was reminded, in the way she was reminded every few months, that Carmine did not receive calls on Tuesdays. She set her phone down. She finished her coffee. She moved on with her morning, because she had always been very good at moving on, and because nothing in the newspaper article connected itself, in her mind, to a Friday night in a restaurant on the 14th floor, or to a waitress who had caught a breadbasket and said 2 quiet, polite words before walking away. She did not make that connection. She never made it. And 3 months later, when the engagement ended, for reasons that were cited officially as personal and were not discussed publicly, she moved on from that too. She was very good at moving on. It had always been one of her best qualities. It had also always been one of her worst. Elena heard about the end of the engagement the same way she heard about most things that were not directly related to her work. She did not hear about it right away. She was busy. When she did hear, she was in the break room at the Federal Building, pouring coffee from the machine that had been broken for 6 weeks and been fixed and broken again, the way that particular machine always was. The information arrived as an offhand comment from a colleague who had read something somewhere and mentioned it in passing. Elena poured her coffee. She said something non-committal. She went back to her desk. She sat down. She opened the file she had been working on. And then, for just a moment, she allowed herself to sit back in her chair and look at the ceiling and feel the specific, quiet weight of something that had been fully and completely finished. Not triumph, not satisfaction, something quieter than both. The feeling of a thing that had needed to be done, that she had done, that was now behind her. She let herself have that feeling for about 30 seconds. Then she sat forward. She picked up her pen. She got back to work. Because that was the thing about Elena Vasquez that Vivian Cole had never understood, had never looked closely enough to see, had never thought to look for beneath the apron and the breadbasket and the 2 polite words offered to a room full of people who were not paying attention. Elena Vasquez did not need anyone to see her. She only needed to see herself clearly. And that, it turned out, had been enough all along. She left the office at 7 that evening. She stopped at the coffee place 2 blocks from the building, the good one, with the single-origin beans and the barista who remembered her order, not the break room machine that had never fully committed to being functional. She ordered the coffee she liked. She paid for it. She walked out into the evening, the city doing its usual thing around her, traffic and voices and the particular energy of a place that did not slow down for anyone. She thought about calling her mother. She would. She would call her tonight and tell her something had concluded and that things were going to be steadier now, and that the appointment on Thursday was still on, and she would be there. She thought about Kevin, the busboy from Alara, who she heard had been promoted to a server position in the 2 months since she had left. She was glad about that. She thought about Philip, who had given her a small nod across a dining room when she needed one. She thought about a card on her kitchen table that she had finally moved to a drawer last week, not because it mattered any less, but because it had done what it needed to do and did not need to sit out anymore. She walked to the subway. She went home. She made a proper meal, the kind she had not made in years because the kind of person she had been for those years did not have time for proper meals, and she ate it at her kitchen table without looking at her phone. And at the end of the evening, she sat in the quiet of her apartment and felt something she did not try to name, because naming it would have made it smaller than it was. She just sat with it. The woman who had learned to be invisible, who had never actually been invisible at all, who had walked into a restaurant on a Friday night to cover rent and walked back out carrying something she had not expected to find and had known exactly what to do with it. Some people look at a waitress and see a waitress. Some people look at a waitress and see nothing at all. Elena Vasquez had spent her whole life understanding the difference, and on the night that it mattered, she had stood very still, said 2 quiet words, and waited. She was very good at waiting, and she was even better at what came after.